open the floor to some Q&A right now. So I'm gonna sit here and just take a sip. We'll have someone going around, I believe, with a mic. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Someone will come by with a mic. Feel free to ask anything and everything. Truly, I'm an open book.
Hello. You've come quite far from your injury, to not coming out of your routine, talking us today. What is the next phase of your recovery?
Yeah. So I have come a really long way, which I think RYLA is always the time I'm able to reflect on that. And a lot of it's due to your questions. And I always end up crying at some point. So the next phase for me is learning how to live. So, oh my gosh, already. So, a recent thing, which is like absolutely huge, is I got my license, which is crazy because I couldn't even be in the car for 5 minutes without feeling like I was gonna vomit or pass out. I've been learning how to drive the last year, and I had to start with 5 minutes. Again, I felt horrible. So now that I have hit that huge milestone of getting my license, it's learning, okay, well, how can I do that and manage my symptoms? It's continuing to learn what I'm able to tolerate. So there's going to be days where I don't feel up to driving, and I'm still gonna have to rely on my mom or my boyfriend to drive me places. It's going to be just continuing to explore my limitations and knowing what I can and can't do, and also recognizing that mindset is huge, and the narrative I have in my brain plays a huge part too. So I have to be very aware of what I think I can do and what I think I can't do, because that's going to determine what comes next. Because if I think I can't go somewhere, or I think I can't do something, I'm not gonna try, right? So the next phases of recovery and treatment for me is continuing my vestibular and vision therapy and autonomic retraining and all the stuff I've been doing, but also learning how to integrate all of that into life things and learning how can I live with this body that I'm in and the limitations and what are my limitations, and just continuing to explore that.
How do you think RYLA affected your situation, how you recovered?
I love RYLA. RYLA gave me a place to be me. It was the only thing in my, it was the only thing in my, since my recovery that stayed normal. So, it happened when I was a senior in high school. I was out of school for most of the year. I wanted to come back as an SC, and I was able to come back as an SC, but I couldn't actually fulfill that role. So me thinking, well, I'm not capable of this at all. So I was thinking, well, I won't be a part of RYLA. But luckily, oh my gosh, luckily all these lovely, lovely people here decided it was important, and they wanted to give me a space to continue to come to and exist. So RYLA has changed a lot, because you see here how all these people are so energetic, they're so positive. For me, that was so out of my capacity, and a lot of it's still very much out of my capacity. But they welcomed me as I was. I helped out in the supply closet for the first year after my injury, thinking like, okay, I can try to do this. After that, I realized even that was too much, and I thought, okay, well then that's that. And they said, no, we want you to be a part of RYLA. We think that we love you, and I love them, and they've kept me around, and that gave me actually the opportunity to speak to you all here today. I gave my first speech in 2018, which was a year after my injury, which so much has changed since then. I mean, I sat here on stage with my weighted blanket It was probably a 30-minute speech. Half of it was voice recorded because I physically could not speak. There was no Q&A. You guys all came in and you guys danced. There was music on. The first few years, visually, I couldn't even tolerate looking into the crowd or seeing a crowd at all. So I kind of just stared like right here in front of me. There was still a ton of movement, like visually things were moving and I was really dizzy. And when the conferees of 2018, 2019, and probably even 2020, oh, not 2020, but those years they came in, they walked in single file, incredibly silent. There might be some, who was a conferee in that year? Okay, yeah, so they can attest that Amanda and at that point Katie Ann drilled into them that you cannot move, you cannot speak, you cannot do anything. So they came and they sat just like this the entire speech, and when I was done, they stood up, very slowly, single file, left. So RYLA for me has been, I always say, a home. You know, it's a place I come back to. It's a place I recognize growth and transformation. It's a place where I can just show up as me and experience a sense of normalcy, because like I said, RYLA was the only thing that kind of stayed normal. After that, all my friends went off to college. I, didn't keep in touch with a lot of them. My life was very different, but every year towards June, I knew that RYLA was there. So RYLA has meant the world to me, and some of these people in the back have been with me since my conferee year in 2015. So a lot of love to every single one of you.
Hi. When you really didn't do a lot of cognitive actions, what did you do to kind of keep yourself not bored, keep yourself from kind of recessing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first few years, I always like to use this analogy. Just imagine when you're really sick, right? Like whether you have the flu or something, you're really sick and you don't feel good. You actually don't do very much when you don't feel good, right? Because you don't have the energy, you don't have the capacity. So for me, those first few years, I did not feel good at all. I couldn't listen to audiobooks because it was too noisy. I couldn't be on my phone very much. So really, the first few years, I was just in my head. I daydreamed. I came up with scenarios that was well, if I get better, maybe I can do this, or maybe I can do that. So I was in my head a lot and trying to stay positive and planning out these realities that I think would be really cool to live if I had the capacity to do so. As time went on and I built a little bit more tolerance to things, I began to try listening to audiobooks or listening to a little bit of music. I would try a few different hobbies every now and then. This is now later on, so I'm about 8 years in. So about year six is I would try to, I wood burned something once, and I taught myself how to knit a year ago, and I had rats at the point. That was actually a big thing that kept my attention, is that I had rats as pets. I had 4 of them. I started with 1 and then I ended up having 4. So realistically, a lot of my free time and any time I had the capacity to was I would sit with them and play with them. So I had a companion. We had a dog at that point and cats. So realistically, it was just getting through the day, sitting with my little pets, and that was that. And over the years, as I've built more tolerance, I've begun to do a bit more. But yeah, in the beginning, it really wasn't very much. I still had to go to the therapies, a lot of vision and vestibular therapy, and that's what took a lot of my energy. So I didn't feel good from that. You don't feel good from it. It's supposed to spark your symptoms to help you get better. So realistically, just imagine being really sick for years of your life and not feeling well enough to really do anything.
What do you think was like the kind of first time you realized that recovery, or like kind of beginning recovery, was in reach, and kind of realizing that like there is a future for yourself?
It's changed throughout the years. I think initially I wanted to be 100% better. So I set that as a goal for myself of being, I want to be 100% symptom free. I'm not going to do X, Y, Z until I'm 100% symptom free. And I realized kind of quickly that like, okay, maybe that isn't the case. Maybe I won't be 100% symptom free. Maybe these things I'm experiencing are actually going to be either lifelong or sticking around for a while. So then also I did pivot at one point being like, well, this will be my life forever. I won't get better at all. How the heck am I supposed to live like this when I can't leave my room, you know? But over time I found the balance, and I think what helped with that is just I just kept showing up. I allowed myself to have the perspective that things can change, and to find the beauty in things and find the positive and celebrate those little wins. Because if I didn't celebrate those little wins at all, I would feel like I'm making no progress. Because when you're someone who is high functioning and can do a lot of things, like for me, like I was running a lot of miles a week. I was very active. I was an athlete. I was coming from a high functioning standpoint. So I had to learn to stop comparing myself to that person and just work with what I have in the moment. And that meant celebrating those little wins. So it's like, okay, I can read for 30 seconds. I felt horrible. I had to have like 20 minutes of like, should I rest after my first time trying to read for 30 seconds? But I read for 30 seconds, right? It's that but. It's, hey, I did this and I felt bad, but I did it. And over time, I was able to see bigger steps of progress. And it really wasn't until the last few years that it was actually like, okay, progress is palpable. Like I can feel it, I can see it. Because when you only have life inside of like your house and doctor's appointments and therapies to compare it to, it can be hard to track progress, because it's like, okay, I can do my therapy exercises for a little longer. Maybe I'm not as symptomatic as I started when I first started them, right? But now that I am experiencing life outside of the house, it's like, oh, okay, I can sit in a restaurant now. That's progress. I couldn't leave my room. So realistically, it's just keeping the hope and celebrating those small wins, because you'll notice change. Change is always happening. You just have to open your perspective to it.
Do you think, like, if you hadn't experienced, like, your head injury, because I think a lot of what you shared with us was how much you've grown as a person, if that hadn't happened, do you think you would have been able to be who you are now? Like, do you think the experience helped you grow and kind of get to know yourself, I guess?
Yes, 100%. I think I was lucky to have some predisposition to being a positive person and loving life and active and stuff like that, but this experience has completely shaped me and who I am. I view life so differently now. You know, I think life is so beautiful and so precious, and not that I wouldn't think that before, but now I know how much can be lost, and I know how quick something can change. So I find myself to be someone who's a lot more grateful. I find myself to not complain about much, because it is what it is. Some things you can't change, and why do I want to spend my time complaining and feeling negative when I don't know what the next moment brings? I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't want to feel that energy. I want to feel happy. I want to feel positive. I want to embrace life. And in terms of like being where I am today, I don't think I would have been giving speeches if I didn't have the brain injury. I don't think I would have been writing as much or picked up the hobbies. Like I don't think I would have ever taught myself how to like knit or sew, or or play piano or do any of those things. I think when I was forced to be in isolation with myself, I had to get to know myself because it was just me. It was me in a dark room, and obviously I lived with my parents, and I was still in contact with some of my good friends, but yeah, I spent so many nights and days just in my head, exploring my own thoughts, exploring my creativity in my mind before I've ever put anything onto paper. So I think I would have been very different. I think I would have went to the college I had thought I would have gone to and ran and become a vet, and now my life has completely shifted on a different route.
How has your perspective changed from the first time you spoke to RYLA students to now?
Yeah, so the first time I spoke was the first time ever public speaking, and I just want to share a bit of my story and my perspective, and I think the perspective I shared held some positivity and hope, but it was also heavy because I was still very early on in my recovery. I still had very, very, very debilitating symptoms. So I think the perspective I shared was really, really drilling it into people that tomorrow's not guaranteed. You need to live in the moment. You have to, because if you don't, what happens if something happens to you like happened to me? What are you going to do then? So I think the first year I gave the speech was very much emphasis on tomorrow's not guaranteed. You need to embrace the moment. And I've carried on that theme. I've carried on those perspectives, but now I do it in a way that feels more gentle to me, and gentle, I think, all around, because I've learned to soften around my experience. I've learned that this is just, it is what it is, and bad things happen, and it's scary and it's fearful, but it also can be okay, and it can be happy, and it can be good. And perspective-wise, just in general, every year I share new things that I've learned. So the first year there wasn't, I don't think, any concussion education, and there wasn't any talk about something called pain reprocessing therapy, because I hadn't known about that. And so the speeches that I've given every year has just grown as I've grown. So it's very interesting to see the differences between each year, because every year there might be a little different nugget of knowledge in there that maybe I picked up that year.
What drives your ambition, or how are you so consistently motivated given your
I would say acknowledging that perspective writes your reality. So when I was able to realize that, I was able to apply myself to align myself more with what I wanted my reality to be. Whether or not that meant actually changing my physical symptoms, or more changing how I viewed my physical symptoms, because they both play a huge part. I think knowing that life is precious is a very great motivator, and also knowing that if I didn't apply myself, I wasn't going to get better. These therapies, this vision therapy, vestibular therapy, all this stuff that you have, it's work. You have to apply yourself. It's like building a muscle. You're not going to get stronger if you're not exercising that muscle. So I knew, especially coming from an athlete background, that I knew that I wasn't going to improve if I didn't do what I needed to do. And it was tough. It was really hard. It still can be really hard. And I don't always have motivation. Sometimes I just want to sit in my bed and I don't want to do anything because it's so overwhelming. Because if I think about all the things I have to do to help manage my symptoms or take care of my body, and if I just list out all the things I have to do in my day, it's now I feel overwhelmed, and now I actually don't really want to do any of that. Even though logically I know those things are beneficial and helpful to me, there's a part of me that's like, I'm too overwhelmed. I don't want to do it. And I've learned to recognize those feelings and accept it as it is, and being like, you know what, if I'm overwhelmed with all the to-do lists I have to do with managing my body and my symptoms, let me take off that pressure. I don't have to do any of that today. And I ask myself, what would make me feel good in this moment? Maybe that's going outside, maybe it's listening to music. You know, I try to take the pressure off myself, because if you have so much pressure on yourself all the time, 24/7, you're gonna get burnt out, you're gonna get overwhelmed. And it's okay to not be on your A game 24/7. I mean, everyone needs breaks and rests. So I think as time went on, I mean, I used to be someone to push myself to the point where I would like nearly pass out in therapy, because I was like, no pain, no gain. Over time, I realized that's actually not helpful at all to me. So really just relearning how to view life, view what I had to do, my obligations, and also giving myself grace, giving myself space to just exist without these obligations.
How has your relationship with music changed throughout your journey, even from before you got injured to now?
So I first started playing guitar like in middle school, I believe, and I didn't really play very much at all from middle school to high school. I don't really remember playing that often, and I wasn't very good. I still am not that good, but my relationship towards music changed because it was something that I could kind of do with the capacity I had, if I had the capacity in that moment. And in the beginning of my injury, when I first picked up my guitar, which was probably not until year 3, you know, when I first was able to actually pick it up, I had to wear earplugs when playing an acoustic guitar because it was too loud for me. I felt my fingers not receptive to like what my brain wanted to do, and I would feel incredibly fatigued for just trying to finger pick a song. But over time, I kept with it, and I found that it was something that I could do that didn't have to necessarily do with my recovery. So music, whether listening to music or playing music, allowed a little bit of an escape and an expression, and something that I can come into myself with. But it also brought along sometimes some frustrations of like, I want to be able to play my guitar or learn piano and do these things, but I physically can't, and that's frustrating. Or I would play for like an hour and I'd be like, well, now my head really hurts and I feel horrible. So the relationship with music, I think with a lot of things, is just recognizing that sometimes I have more capacity than others, but it's also okay to indulge in something that makes you feel good. And just because it might cause more symptoms or might be difficult, it doesn't mean it's something bad to do. Yeah, and now my relationship with music, like recently, is a lot of, again, expression and enjoyment and just finding myself and trying not to put pressure on myself to play well or learn a certain thing. It's really just finding joy in that moment.
How is your daily routine today with all these changes?
It changes. It really changes a lot. My daily routine now is I wake up and I try not to scroll on my phone because I know that it's not good for me to do right when I wake up. So I'll try to do a meditation. I'll use one of my devices called like a vagus nerve stimulator, which, a little brief knowledge, is your vagus nerves makes you feel calm. And for me, it's prescribed to help with chronic migraine. So I'll use that in the morning. I'll make sure I hydrate, take my salts, I take my medications first thing. I'll wake up and first I'll kind of like evaluate how am I feeling and what do I need to do today. Do I need to do vision therapy today, or do I want to go on a walk today, or Do I have a doctor's appointment? Do I have to be somewhere today where I shouldn't be doing vision therapy because I know going somewhere is going to be difficult? So really, my weekly routine is I'll ride the stationary bike at least 5 times a week because that helps with my autonomic retraining. I'll do vision therapy at least 4 times, and vestibular therapy, I'll sometimes loop that in with that. And now, as I've been getting more out into the world, on the weekends, I typically am with my boyfriend and I'm at his house, or maybe we're doing things. So sometimes that also has an effect on my routine. So say we go to an antique store on a Saturday, right? I'm not gonna wanna do my vision therapy later because I'm already visually feeling fatigued and dizzy and symptomatic because being in a store is very, it makes your brain use a lot of your visual input and corrective things if you have some dysfunction. So my weekly routines now look like that, really just seeing how do I feel and what exactly do I need to do, and it's a mix of always riding the stationary bike, trying to get outside, trying to meditate and do a little bit of gentle yoga, and incorporating the therapies that are required for me to continue improvement and continue recovery.
What does surviving versus thriving mean to you?
Surviving for me, I relate it to kind of states of your autonomic nervous system. So if you are in a state of survival, you're very much hyper aware, you're hyperactive, you're a little bit more in a stress response when you're in survival mode. So for me, the first probably like 5 years, I was definitely in survival mode. Maybe even the first 6 years, I was in survival mode. And I was just trying to get through my day. I mean, I woke up and I go, okay, I just need to eat breakfast. Okay, I ate breakfast, I'm gonna go rest after eating a bowl of oatmeal. And after resting, it's like, okay, I can't lay down too long because that's not good for me. Let me get up. So I was very, very much in survival mode. And I was trying to survive, and I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I think it's very much a protective response when you're experiencing something like that. And thriving can go very much hand in hand. So even in the survival, I tried to thrive with my mindset. I tried to thrive with knowing that I can change the way I view things, knowing that I can incorporate some hobbies. And now I find myself in a very transient state. I feel like there are still a lot of parts that are very much still survival, and I'm not going to recognize what I've actually experienced now or the last few years until a few years down the line. Very much how it was the first few years. Like, I didn't even realize how bad it actually was until way later, you know? So now I think, of course, there's still that survival because I'm still managing a lot of symptoms and it's still stressful to my body. I still have that stress response, but I'm learning how to thrive with it. And learning how to thrive with it, to me, is acceptance, it's positivity, it's hope, it's knowing that I can't change certain things, you know? And if I can choose to live in the moment and choose to do things despite having limitations, then I'm thriving, you know? And I don't think I would equate thriving to necessarily my level of symptoms, because I might feel horrible. Like, a good example is I went to like a craft fair with my boyfriend a month or two ago, and I had a horrible migraine attack, like the worst migraine attack I've had in so long, and we had to pull over on the side of the road, and I was like dry heaving because of the pain. But in that moment, I found myself just like laughing in disbelief, being like, wow, this is crazy that this can just happen like this, you know? Just experience like such a high level of discomfort that it makes you like vomit and not able to like move your head or talk. And I was surviving in that moment, but at the same time I was thriving because I had that perspective of, well, I can't change it. I'm gonna do my best to get through this moment. So I think, surviving and thriving are just like waves. They're different wavelengths, but they interact a lot. And yeah, I think it changes throughout the years.
Compared to when you first started like using the bike and walking,
Mhm.
how far or like how long do you think you can last while walking or biking before you like find yourself needing to stop? And do you ever try to like see how long you could last, like once a month to see like improvement?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a good question. In the beginning, I used to try to see how long I could last for things, and it wouldn't end well. I tried to run in the beginning after my injury, kind of right when I started vestibular neurooptometric rehab, which was like 6 months after my injury. I tried running, and I felt horrible. I ended up in bed for like 3 days straight because I was so dizzy. But I was like, it's okay, like I'll be fine. And I kept that mindset of like, well, if I just push myself and I kept maxing myself out, eventually I'll get there. But what I realize is when you have conditions like chronic migraine, dysautonomia, or like POTS, what I have, and the umbrella of like post-concussion syndrome, is you can't do that. Because if I tried to find my limit every single month, I would have setbacks that lasted maybe a day, maybe a few days, maybe a week, right? And for me, that's not sustainable. So now I don't do that. I take a very gradual approach because I've also learned a lot more about chronic migraine disease, which is actually something I've realized. I've always had migraine disease my whole life. I had headaches as a kid, but I didn't realize that they were migraine attacks until I had my head injury and had chronic migraine and realized, you know what, this is actually genetic and I've had this my whole life, so I'm predisposed to that. And learning all about migraine disease and learning all about POTS and learning all about post-concussion syndrome is there's a fine line between pushing yourself but also rest and recovery and finding a point where you have elasticity where you can bounce back. Because if you have a rubber band and you keep stretching it and it snaps, that's not good, right? You want to go to the point of resistance where you're going to be able to bounce back. So for me, that point of resistance changes a lot, which is why I've had to really, really, really learn how to tune into my body and do that. So yeah, I don't test my limit every single month. I think for me, I just am continually putting myself in a space of discomfort, even when I don't feel good. I'm continually putting myself out there in terms of learning how to drive or trying to go out to a restaurant or a store. And I know that if I keep that up, there will be improvements in tolerance levels. And was there another question? Was that a two-parter or was that the whole question?
It was like, I was just, it was like you answered it.
Oh, okay. Is that it?
I guess we can give another round of snaps for Kirsten. You're right, Kirsten. Thank you so much for speaking. So this time now is going to